What do you get when you take Escape from Tarkov and you combine it with a game developer that clearly understands satisfying gameplay loops and you add ducks into it? Well, of course, you get Escape from Duckov. So, of course, today we are diving into Escape from Duckov and giving it the classic SWAS meter treatment. Now, this is a game that sounds absolutely ridiculous on paper, but somehow still turned out to be one of the most creative and satisfying experiences that I have played in quite some time. It's part Tarkov-like, part Fever Dream, and 100% duck. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest. When I first seen this game releasing, I was expecting an asset flip or something super cheap and lazy, just trying to capitalize on the extraction shooter genre. But ladies and gentlemen, I was incredibly surprised with this title. So right away, Escape from Duckov absolutely nails its visual style. It somehow manages to perfectly blend serious, grounded world building with the absurdity of ducks in combat gear, and it just works. It's stylish, charming, and somehow gritty all at once. Now, the enemy variety is another standout. Off the start of the game, you'll notice kind of just these generic ducks walking around, not really too much special about them, but as you progress and certainly as you explore the base map, as well as the other maps that you can unlock or travel to, you'll notice that there's a lot of new threats that you're going to be facing, which will help to keep every raid feeling fresh and exciting. And you combine that with a huge weapon pool, each which has its very own distinct sounds and feel. The combat never gets stale, at least not in the time that I've played it. Never might be an overstatement, of course, right? If you've played Escape from Duckov for 500 hours, you're probably going to have seen and heard most things inside the game. Mechanically, this game has everything you would expect from a Tarkov-like at launch, which is fantastic. So you got healing, weapon modding, stash and hideout management, extraction points, and so much more. The kicker? Every single interaction feels good. The developer behind this really blended together crisp sound effects and polished visuals, which make even the smallest interactions in the game feel extremely satisfying. Now, this was developed by Bilibili and developed by Team Soda and published by Bilibili. So it already has overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam, which is incredible considering it just launched on the 16th of October. There are a couple of other games under this developer's umbrella already. I'll let you go ahead and check those out on the Steam page if you'd like. Certainly nothing too much of note, I would say. When it comes to the publisher, they definitely have a little bit more titles under their scope as well. So we have things like Core Keeper, Necess, Warm Snow, Pal World is one that most people will know, and a lot of other games that you guys can go and check out as well. So I definitely recommend checking out their store pages if you're curious about the other projects they've worked on. Now, progression inside Escape from Duckov is another absolute highlight to mention. So upgrading weapons, experimenting with different ammo types, and just improving your base overall all feel incredibly impactful. There's a very strong balance between permanent upgrades and loss on death like you'd expect from an extraction shooter Tarkov-like, and it's tuned pretty damn near perfectly. Success feels rewarding, and setbacks don't necessarily feel meaningless or, game ending, right? So very similar to Tarkov, you have these inventory slots on your little dog companion where you can put in gear. That gear is saved. So you can put any sort of quest items in there. You can put in medical items. You can put in, armor, whatever you may want. And even if you die, those slots are safe. They are protected. Now, anything on your character gets dropped when you die. So that's ammunition, clothing, everything except your melee weapon, essentially, just like Escape from Tarkov. The only difference being In this game, since it's a single-player game, they kind of gave us a little bit more of an edge, you could say, so you can actually run back onto the map and recover your gear. Keep in mind, the map itself will reset, so all the enemies will respawn and all that sort of good stuff, but your gear will still be in the same spot where you died, so you'll still have to fight to get to it. It's not just a quick run back and grab it, and it's super easy, but you can get back to it and recover your items, which is pretty cool. Overall, Duckov feels like a complete experience despite the strange concept. It's a parody done right, I would say. It's one that respects its inspiration while also carving out its own identity. No pun intended. A lot of times when games like this release, we see just a very cheap knockoff that doesn't really have much to offer on its own, but this game definitely stands on its own two webbed feet, and it does a fantastic job of it. Now, as with any title that releases, and certainly any title that I review on my channel, there are certainly a few negatives to discuss, so let's go ahead and talk about those now. Now, this is possibly the shortest negatives list that I've had for any title that I have reviewed so far, which says a lot because I am a bit of a pedantic gamer. So a few small setbacks. The story isn't really a story yet, at least not at this current stage of development. I don't know if things are going to change as it goes on. It mostly exists through scattered notes and a lot of fetch style missions. So a lot of your gameplay, especially the missions if you're trying to progress those, is going to be based around going out into specific maps, collecting a specific item, and bringing it back to the vendors, which is kind of exactly what you'd expect from a Tarkov-like game, to be honest. It's fine for a gameplay first title, but if you're expecting really deep dialogue or branching narrative, you're not going to find it here. Again, at least not at this current state. That may be something that is open to change. And finally, for the negatives, number 2, finally, the sound design could use a little bit of polish, particularly with directional audio. In firefights, it's not always clear where shots are coming from, which can be frustrating in such a punishing game. Now, apart from gunshots themselves, movement and stuff like that is also a little bit questionable. You can get headsets in the game, much like Tarkov, but those really don't seem to change the audio. They more so just show on your screen which direction the audio is coming from, very much like a visualize sound effects like you have in something like Fortnite, if you're familiar with that, which again is kind of a lazy workaround, I would say. I would definitely prefer to just have better audio when you have the headsets on. But honestly, that's it for the negatives. Everything else was super enjoyable, and you could critique tiny things here or there, but for the price, this is a very, very solid experience. Now let's go ahead and go into the overall SWAS breakdown. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're unfamiliar, SWAS stands for Story, World, Action, Sound, and Style. So we're going to be rating the game based on those points. Every rating is going to be out of 10, and for the overall score, we add them all up, and then we average them out, and that is what the game earns. So let's go ahead and talk about the story first. I gave the story an 8 out of 10. You don't really come into a game like this expecting deep dialogue and branching quest lines and all those sorts of things, so for what it is, the story is very enjoyable. Now, the world, in my opinion, is a 10 out of 10 without any question or reasonable doubt. It's super enjoyable to explore. The world building is there. There's notes you can discover, plenty of different enemies, all those sorts of good things. This is a fantastic setting. It could have been very easily just something that is a complete parody, right? Very lazy world building, but it wasn't. It's special, and that deserves mention. For the action, it is once again going to be a 10 out of 10. The combat is super satisfying. The progression is there. It's also super satisfying. It feels important to level up your character. It feels important to build new things inside the hideout, and that is incredible. We also have the sound, which is going to be an 8 out of 10. So the sound definitely could use a little bit of work, as I mentioned. It's definitely a bit disappointing in some regards, but you could also argue that it's taking from its inspiration, which is Escape from Tarkov, of course, since the sound design in that game is notoriously terrible. And finally, we have the style, which I give an absolute 10 out of 10. This game looks fantastic, and the overall sound design and just the pizzazz in the game is incredible, right? So the style definitely earns that 10 out of 10. Escape from Duckov is one of those games that shouldn't work, but it somehow does. It's stylish, it's fun, it's shockingly deep for what on the surface just appears to be a very poorly made meme. And if you love extraction shooters or you just want something a little bit different, Duckov might surprise you. Thank you so much for watching to the end, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you next time.